The same generation that was told to stay outside until the streetlights flickered on is now criticized for being too present in their children's lives. And that contradiction alone reveals almost everything about Gen X parents. If your childhood unfolded in the 60s, 70s, or early 80s, you likely remember unlocking the front door to a quiet, empty house. No parents waiting inside. They were at work, both of them. And at that time, on that scale, it was something relatively new in American history. Here's a number that puts it in perspective. Between 1970 and 1990, the percentage of mothers with children under 6 who joined the workforce rose from roughly 37% to nearly 60%, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. You were what people later called a latchkey kid. You let yourself in, found something to eat, handled it. No drama. A 2004 marketing study by Reach Advisors described Gen X as one of the least parented and least nurtured generations in American history. And that description isn't exaggerated. You learned to solve your own problems because there simply wasn't another choice. Your mom wasn't emailing teachers to challenge your grades. Your dad wasn't stepping into your friendship conflicts. If anything, he'd tell you to deal with it yourself. Or not deal with it at all. That daily independence shaped your worldview in a deep way. But alongside that freedom came something quieter, a kind of emotional self-reliance that looked like resilience on the surface, yet sometimes felt a lot like isolation. Now, fast forward to today. Listen to how Gen X parents talk about their upbringing, and you'll start to see a pattern. Many of them openly admit that their latchkey childhood still lingers in the background. With striking honesty, they describe how intentionally they chose a different path. They decided to be more available, more involved, not by accident, but as a direct response to what they themselves lacked growing up. And when Gen X parents step into their children's challenges, something interesting happens. Some observers say they can be even more protective than the generation before them. They've even earned a nickname, stealth fighter parents. It means they're not hovering constantly. They're not monitoring every move. But when something truly matters, they commit completely. Most of the time, they'll let you handle your own struggles. But if the situation turns serious, they'll walk into the principal's office ready to advocate for you with a focus and intensity that surprises everyone in the room. This wasn't necessarily their original plan. Many Gen X parents insist they never intended to be overprotective. They valued the freedom they had. They believed independence built character. Then they had children, and something shifted, quietly, almost invisibly. The memory of that empty house, of managing everything alone, of wondering whether anyone was truly paying attention. When you become the parent, those memories don't disappear. They resurface. So what actually happens when you raise children through the lens of how you were raised? A psychologist named Diana Baumrind, she spent years analyzing how different parents raise their children, and eventually she identified a simple framework. Most parenting styles, she argued, can be understood through two dimensions. First, responsiveness. How emotionally available and warm a parent is. Second, demandingness. How strongly they enforce rules, limits, and expectations. From that, several clear styles emerged. Authoritative parenting ranks high on both warmth and structure. These parents are emotionally present, but they also establish firm boundaries. That's not the same as authoritarian parenting, which is strict and rule-driven, yet offers little emotional support. And it's not permissive parenting either, which is affectionate and gentle, but avoids setting limits. Authoritative parenting sounds more like this. I care about you. I support you. I'm here. But your choices still carry consequences. Across decades of developmental psychology research, this pattern shows consistent outcomes. Children raised this way tend to regulate their emotions more effectively. They often develop stronger self-esteem. They show better problem-solving skills. They experience lower levels of anxiety and depression. Academically, they usually perform better. Socially, they tend to build healthier friendships. This correlation has appeared repeatedly across multiple long-term studies. Now, there isn't a massive, definitive study proving that Gen X parents as a whole have consciously adopted the authoritative model. But if you listen closely to how they describe their approach, be present but not overbearing, set limits but stay warm, step in when needed but allow struggle, it aligns remarkably well with that framework. Gen X understands hardship firsthand. They entered adulthood during economic downturns. They watched stable pension systems fade away. They saw long-term job security, something their parents relied on, become uncertain. When you grow up realizing that institutions won't always shield you, it reshapes how you prepare your children. You can't promise them stability. So instead, you try to make them resilient, strong enough to withstand whatever life throws at them. But here's the twist. They're raising children in a world that barely resembles the one they knew. Gen X is the first generation parenting in the age of social media, where every action can be documented, compared, and judged online. They grew up in a time when privacy was normal, when embarrassing moments didn't exist forever on the internet. So the culture of broadcasting achievements, milestones, and personal details often feels foreign to them. And maybe that's part of the quiet exhaustion people notice in Gen X parents. They're supporting aging parents who require more attention, navigating careers that may have plateaued, managing financial pressures, all while trying to give their children something better without making them fragile. They've become what many call the sandwich generation, compressed between baby boomer parents who think they're too indulgent and Gen Z children who sometimes feel they're too strict. They're constantly translating between generations that no longer speak the same language. Your parents believe you're too soft. Your children believe you're too rigid. And in the middle of it all, you're attempting something delicate. Preserve the independence, keep the resilience, but add what you once longed for: emotional presence, attentiveness, the reassurance that someone was truly paying attention. What stands out about Gen X parents, according to those who analyze generational behavior, is that they're not overly concerned with meeting outside expectations. That latchkey childhood taught them something subtle but powerful. Approval from the outside world is unpredictable. So instead of chasing validation, they parent according to an internal compass, guided by memory. By remembering what it actually felt like to be a kid back then, which means they might allow their teenager to repeat the same mistake. Because sometimes learning requires repetition. But when everything unravels at 2 in the morning, they'll answer the call. No lectures, no shame, just presence. They remember navigating crises alone. They remember having no one to reach out to when things went wrong. And that memory shapes their response. There's also their unique relationship with technology. Gen X is old enough to remember a world before the internet, before smartphones dominated attention. They experienced childhood boredom as something ordinary, something that forced creativity. They've lived in both eras, so they understand what real presence feels like. When they set limits around screens, it's not just fear talking, it's experience. They understand the benefits, but they're cautious about the trade-offs. They're more technologically fluent than their boomer parents, yet more skeptical than their own children. Picture a Gen X parent at a school event, slightly uncomfortable among hyper-involved, hyper-intense adults. Not hovering, not performing, but fully there. It may look contradictory, but the goal is simple. Raise children who feel safe and capable, secure yet self-reliant. You know they support you, and you also know how to manage your own life. It's not flawless. It probably doesn't align perfectly with what popular parenting experts recommend. But for a generation once labeled as one of the least nurtured in American history, the fact that they are showing up, truly showing up emotionally, matters. Not just sitting in the stands, scrolling through a phone, actually being present. They're attempting something complex, breaking the cycle without discarding the strengths, keeping the independence, keeping the resilience, but adding warmth. It doesn't fit neatly into categories, and maybe that's intentional. Gen X has never been particularly interested in fitting into tidy boxes anyway. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing. And if you'd like to support these deeper explorations, you can tap the join button and become a channel member.